Mass Effect is a game that I never played at the time of its release, 2007. In thinking about why I didn't, because it's sci-fi, it has a lot of the things that I would like, space exploration, that kind of thing. I realised what it was, and it was because I'd played KOTOR. And Mass Effect shares many of the same design ideas as Knights of the Old Republic. The crew that you get to know as you explore the galaxy. You have a ship that is an iconic ship that you're flying around in. It seemed to me that what Bioware was trying to do was create Star Wars without having to pay for the Star Wars license. And anyone who's not aware of my kind of where I'm coming from, you may not be aware I can be an idiot sometimes, and I was being an idiot in that case. So I didn't play the original Mass Effect at the time. I did come back to it in the teens, the 2000 teens, maybe 2015 I played it, so a long time after it was released, and it was old, and I couldn't bear it. So when the Legendary Edition came out, it's a good opportunity for someone like me who never jumped into the game when it was first released to try it now with some upgrades, some tinkering to the graphics to make it feel a little bit more contemporary. Therefore, I can't really speak to how the two games compare very closely because I don't know the original Mass Effect very well. I can tell you that when I returned to it it's over 5 years ago now, before the Legendary Edition, it didn't hold me. It felt very, very janky. And I didn't feel that with the Legendary Edition. It kept me playing. I didn't find... There were some annoyances, which I'll go into, but there were not too many barriers to entry, and the overall look and feel of the game didn't put me off playing with the Legendary Edition, which certainly happened when I returned to the original many years after its release. So what are the impressions of the Legendary Edition? Good. I was able to just jump into the game, and I really felt like I was experiencing it as someone might have experienced it when it first came out, with the caveat that it's looking a bit old and it feels a little bit janky. What I mean by that is that it's little subtle things, like the fact that the environments in the game, the Citadel, for instance, which is like the hub for the galactic civilization in Mass Effect, is supposed to be a big sprawling city, but actually it's an interconnected series of quite small environments, really. They have some nice backgrounds, but you can't explore very widely. It's not a huge space. The fact that there's not a lot of NPCs milling about, you have to kind of suspend disbelief a little bit in some of the things that the game is telling you. So this is a sprawling environment. Not really. This is a hub for a huge population. Doesn't seem like it because there are only a few NPCs dotted about here and there. And, there are two clubs on this space station, and these are the hubs where everyone goes to socialize, and there's about 10 people sprinkled about in this huge apparent metropolis. Things like that are to do with just when the game was made, broadening things out a little bit as you take off into space. The same thing kind of applies. So you're going from planet to planet, but actually you can only land on a couple of the planets, and the planets that you can land on have maybe a couple of points of interest, a crashed probe, some stuff that you can scan over there, minerals or something, and then there's the one base where you go and some story stuff can happen on that planet. But they're quite small environments, not sprawling. There's not a lot to explore on the planets. You kind of go there and it's a little arena almost where you do some quests. And for the time, I'm sure it felt really expansive and interesting, and if you're into the lore and stuff, you can of course visit all those different planets, but you just get some flavor text, and maybe you can click the button to survey and you can collect some minerals or some stuff from the planet, but you don't land on it, kind of thing. So yeah, in terms of it being a sprawling universe, it feels a little small sometimes, but actually it's put together in such a way and presented in such a way, how you interface with your spaceship and travel around the galaxy map, and then going into, like, you zoom into different solar systems and stuff. It's presented in such a way that they do a really good job with the resources that they had at the time, and you do ultimately get the sense of traveling across the galaxy. I think it's done remarkably well for the time. those aspects of the game are something that you have to make allowances for the fact that we're playing it in 2021, even though it's been remastered and stuff. Those old aspects of the game still come through. You can't avoid them. It's an older game, and that's fine. That's fine. The graphics help and stuff. But the stuff that actually holds up, given that the game is over however many years old it is now, 15 years, is it something like that? The stuff that really still holds up is the story stuff and the character stuff. And however, I've never really felt that this marketing idea that Bioware is the story developer. They're the guys who create the really intricate stories. I've never really felt that in terms of the plot of those stories. And basically, going back to the Star Wars thing, the debt to Star Wars that the overall plot of Mass Effect owes is immediately obvious. It's so Star Warsy to the extent that at the very end I was thinking, well, oh yeah, this is really like Bioware Star Wars, isn't it? The main guy, spoilers for a 15-year-old game, who's trying to convince you to join him and his master, the Reaper Sovereign, in their conquest of the galaxy. They want to eradicate mankind and stuff. It's kind of, that's Darth Vader and the Emperor, Saren and Sovereign. The parallels were so obvious at times. However, they do succeed in creating a unique universe. I feel like in this case, even though those issues, the main issue I have with the Bioware stories is that they're quite cliched in terms of just the overarching plot. But I think what they do really well in Mass Effect, and they do really well in other games, is world building and character. They do the characters really well. The voices, which as far as I know are the original voices from the game, they've not added new voice lines by new actors, still hold up. And the story of your crew as you get to know them and you travel around the galaxy with them, and the sense you get of this really detailed universe is where the strength of the story is. And yeah, the voice acting in particular is consistently strong throughout. Shepard is a good hero. Again, he's a cliched hero, but that's okay. That's okay. It's a mass market game. It's, it needs to appeal to a lot of people, and he can have some interesting relationships with the people that he meets. Not just your companions as well. The NPCs on the planets are consistently well voiced and compelling. I'm someone who will skip through dialogue because I can read faster than I can listen, and I don't always want to listen to the full dialogue. On several occasions, I was letting it play out and just listening to the actor deliver the lines because I was convinced by the character. So that for me is a real indication that it's working. It's one of those games that you can't rush. And even though I said that like my main bias was to do with the fact that they weren't making the game that I wanted, I think another reason why I didn't gel with it when I came back to it a little later was that the story, the talking, the dialogue, which essentially the story elements of the game, when there are no combat sections, you walk from NPC to NPC. You walk from an environment, you talk to all the NPCs, and you walk to the next one. Breaking it down, that's a bit reductionist, but that is essentially what you're doing. It's a series of conversations. And if you're not in the mood for that, if you want to get to the action, you're going to be frustrated. I would say how much of this game, I would like to know how much of my time spent playing the game was spent talking as opposed to, I don't know, doing the action thing, driving around in the Mako vehicle on the planets. I feel like it's about 50-50, maybe weighted more towards conversation and cutscenes. And if you're not in the mood for that, it will frustrate you. And I think it was frustrating me. I wanted to get to the combat, get to the action. But it's not a game that ever pretends to be anything it's not. And that's to do with how you approach it. So if you come to it thinking, I want a space adventure game where I explore the galaxy, that is what Mass Effect is. It's presented in that way, and you do that, but it's not an open world exploration game where you can go exactly where you want and find unusual. The thing is, you can, but you can't, kind of thing. It is pretty much on rails. You don't have to choose. You don't have to go to places in a certain order, but you do have to go to all those places, and you do have to do that story, and ultimately it culminates in the main storyline coming to a conclusion. In terms of choice, they talk about Bioware choice. Another thing that I've always been a bit leery about, in that the choice never really affects the outcome. I can't speak in depth to that because I haven't done different playthroughs of the game, but basically you can go good or bad. You can go Paragon or Renegade. You have the good dialogue choices and the bad dialogue choices, and they may very well change how certain characters interact with you, and maybe certain things that are possible later in the game, but primarily the game is going to follow the road that it's set, and your character is just a dick or a nice guy through the course of that. It's not going to change what happens fundamentally at the end. It's a little bit of a veneer. It's true, kind of, but not really. You can't change the huge sweep of the game through your choices, but you can change the nature of Shepard and how he comes across in the game, which I suppose is something, that's a little bit of character. In terms of interacting with the characters, later on, Bioware went crazy with the whole companion system, and particularly the romance options. If you don't know, Bioware became almost known more. It became not about Bioware choice, Bioware shag everyone that moves, because, if it got to a point, it was almost fetishizing the idea that you can have these relationships with your companions as you get to know them, and if you can't sleep with your companion, they've not really worked hard enough in creating all the options for that companion. Well, at the stage that Mass Effect is, that's more toned down. It's less of a thing, more limited perhaps, in that the relationships you do have with your companions, I think there's 2 heterosexual relationships and one that is with an alien, which can be either male or female Shepard. So I mean, if that's never been something I come to these games for, but if it's important to you, well, yeah, it was here in Mass Effect, and you can have that kind of relationship. If you're curious, I sacrificed one of the people. I was male Shepard, so one of the female companions that you can have a relationship with, I left her on a planet and she got blown up by a nuclear weapon, so she wasn't an option. I had to settle for the alien. It's funny in that respect, but I kind of liked it more when it's kind of toned down. I did play Dragon Age and some of the Dragon Age Inquisition, where to me it just seemed like fetishizing the whole notion. It became ridiculous. So I like the kind of more subtle approach to it in this, and it is something that happens, but it's over in a blink of an eye, and it's about the relationship that you have with that character from that point on, rather than just seeing a lame sex scene rendered in decades old CGI. So I don't want to break down every element of the game like they used to do: graphics, gameplay, sound, that kind of thing. But I am thinking in terms of what haven't I talked about yet, and the combat system in the game is rather interesting, in that you have your 2 companions and you can give them orders in combat. In reality, I found that the combat was fairly straightforward, however. I didn't have to give my companions orders very often. Halfway through the game, I changed from normal difficulty to hard difficulty, which is 1 down from the very top difficulty, just to see if it changed things significantly. It really didn't. It was so easy. I've only got 1 difficulty to try legendary, I think it is, and but I can't think that it's going to change it hugely. So the combat it feels nice, it looks good for the time, and whatever they've done with the remaster, yeah, it feels okay, but it's not particularly taxing or challenging. Basically, find cover, shoot the enemies. I put my companions, you can choose whether you're able to micromanage your companions' powers. I put my companions on use your powers however you like. and they just followed me around using their powers as I ducked from cover and shot guys. Using one weapon, they give you a range of weapons: 4 pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, sniper rifle, but I just went assault rifle and just shot things, except for extreme circumstances where there's a guy on a tower that you need to snipe. It feels like sci-fi combat. You feel because of the way that it's designed, so your guns are kind of locked to your back and they fold out as you running around. It actually feels and looks kind of cool, but in terms of the actual mechanics and the challenge involved in the combat, it's not the strength of the game, I don't think, but it's nice. And almost in this game, the combat feels like an interlude between the stories. If you're coming to it for kind of action combat, I think you might be a little bit disappointed. So just be aware of that. But the whole package kind of wraps together nicely, and in contrast to the strong characters, the strong world building, and the somewhat kind of cliched sci-fi story. An ancient evil that is returning to the galaxy that you, as Shepard and his crew, have to thwart with the aid of another ancient race. It's such a cliche. It's been a cliche since the 1920s of science fiction, ancient races that we encounter as we explore out in the galaxy. And the universe is built on the bones of a previous race. It's not a particularly new idea or anything like that. It's presented fairly well with the Mass Effect relays, and you can see the actual effects of that previous civilization, all of the technology that mankind is using and the other races are using to move around the galaxy they didn't create and don't fully understand. It's an intriguing idea, but it's exactly the same idea as, say, another contemporary science fiction universe, Warhammer 40k, which is all the technology is so old and so ancient, and we don't fully understand it, but we're still using it to move around the galaxy. So if you're coming for originality of plot, then you might be disappointed as well. But actually, because of the characters and the interesting side stories and little quirks of the characters that you meet throughout, it does keep you engaged in these little vignettes almost on these different planets. And I'd heard a lot about the Mako vehicle and how difficult and annoying it was to control. Not difficult, just annoying. And I have to say that even though this is a remaster, it is still annoying to control. When you're going straight ahead using your boost, it's fine, but if you want to do any maneuvers, it's basically directed half by the WASD keys and half by where you're pointing the mouse. It's a really janky way of controlling the vehicle that never really feels right. You always feel like this, even when you've gotten used to it and you can traverse the various terrains of these planets fairly well and you know what you're doing with it, it always feels off. So with this remaster, they've not kind of re-engineered everything from the ground up. Some of those things must still be hard locked into the game, and they've not changed that to a fun thing to control. It's still fairly annoying. See what you think if you decide to give it a go, but I felt that it was always off all the way through. Extending the Mako thing, the annoyances with the Mako, this is another criticism of the game. It's the inventory system and the kind of items that you can get. They're usually upgrades to your armor. They're always upgrades to your armor and weapons. You do get like your extra medikits and grenades and stuff. I was playing a soldier. It's very frustrating because most of the items that you get don't make a huge difference. There's not a huge difference between a Mark III assault rifle and a Mark IV assault rifle. They all have different elemental effects and damage types that they can put on various characters. So you get into this pattern of constantly checking your weapons to see if this is a small percentage difference in what I'm going to use. And because you have 4 weapons and each of your characters has a selection of 4 weapons, you're searching through all the time to keep them all upgraded. It can be very frustrating, and it's not easy to see at a glance what kind of weapon it is. There's no icon for a lot of these weapons. You see it on your character, but in the inventory system, it's just a name. rather frustrating, and certainly something that is a holdover from the time at which the game came out. It just breaks up the combat in a game that is broken up so much between combat and story anyway. The combat is broken up by the fact that almost every time you go to a locker, you get something that is an upgrade, but then you have to search through to see who needs this gun. So actually, at certain points, I just stopped doing it. And it didn't make much difference. Even though at that stage I was playing on hard, I didn't need to keep doing that. I just went ahead and every time I went back to the ship, maybe I would look at my characters, but it was breaking things up. So I would suggest don't focus too much on upgrading things. It's not necessary, and it breaks up the fun of the combat. So it's a mixed bag. I really enjoyed playing through the story, finding out what the Mass Effect universe is all about. I did actually like Shepard by the end, even though that he's such my Shepard, and maybe if you do the female Shepard, I think there's a chance there that she's going to be more interesting. But the male Shepard, he's such a cliche and a blank slate. He's not very nuanced at all. But at the very end, where the characters think that he has died, and he steps from the rubble, and the music swells, and he has his hero shot. I'm all right. I've survived the end fight. I found myself thinking that's cool, and I like him. He's a little bit like a cliched action hero, but that's okay. I like Shepard, so I can see why people are so fond of him and fond of the game and the characters in the game. So I should really sum up my thoughts. I don't think I've done that very well. The premise of the video is Mass Effect good in 2021? Yeah, I think it is. With this remaster, they've done a good job, just like those recent Resident Evil remasters. It's not as comprehensive as that, but they've made enough tweaks so that you don't feel like you're fighting with the age of the engine, and you can actually enjoy those elements of the game that are good, such as the intrigue with the characters, the good dialogue, the fair to middling plot, but the exploration of the world and finding out about the universe of Mass Effect is intriguing, and it holds up. And I feel like I'm glad I've played it for one of these massive role-play games that I completely missed out. Now I know what people are talking about, so I think it's definitely worth playing. I think you'll enjoy it. You can get through it it took me about 25 hours, so it's not too long to get through the main story, and then if you want to extend that, you can do a lot of side quests. I did enough to get a flavour of what was happening with the side quests, but I certainly didn't go completionist with it. So I would recommend it as a space opera, as a fun, engaging space fantasy. Definitely worth playing. Okay, so thank you for watching this first official review on my channel. I hope it's been interesting. Let me know if you feel like you need more in a review, such as numbers. That's something I'm particularly interested in, like a score. Marks out of 10 or marks out of 100. Are you one of those people that likes that in reviews, or do you prefer not? That's something I'd really like to know. Should I give Mass Effect a number at the end of this review? My instinct is to kind of not do that, but I do understand the benefits of it. I really like Angry Joe's reviews, and I kind of like the fact that they have a number, even though a number is such a weird, ephemeral thing to pick out of the air, give a game a score. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching. This is my first review, and stick around for the new one next one. If you haven't yet, consider liking and maybe subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. I'll be doing more reviews and looking at a broader range of games, new games that come out, old games that have been remastered, maybe even old games that are just old games, and I go back to those. All right, take care guys, thank you for watching, and bye for now.